second study of the book of Ruth and Proverbs 31, the poem of the virtuous woman. Let's go straight to scripture. Let me share my screen with you. I'm going to share the larger screen today. And here in Proverbs 31, I have it on Bible Gateway. A wife of noble character who can find, she's worth far more than rubies. Verses 11 and 12 are all that we're going to look at today. Her husband has full confidence in her. Her husband lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. What King Lemuel is talking about here is she builds trust. Some of the other translations, this is New International. I think New Living actually says trust at this point. Her husband can trust her. She'll greatly enrich his life. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Today is all about building trust. One way of building good friendships, one of the important elements of a good friendship is trust between friends. That's our theme today. So let's go into the book of Ruth. What I'd like you to do is read the first chapter of the book of Ruth. You may want to pause and take about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes to read that chapter. I'm assuming that you have read the chapter. If not, just follow along with us. One of the first things that stood out to me from reading Ruth chapter 1 took place when Naomi returned to Israel after a period of time, quite some time apparently, that she was away. They said, when she returned, "Is it really Naomi?" And Naomi responded, "Don't call me Naomi. Instead, call me Mara." Naomi puts a great deal of emphasis on names, so I thought it would be worthwhile for us to check and see what those names are. In the book of Ruth, the name that we are given there of the main family is, first of all, Elimelech. That means, my God is king. That sets the stage here for the book of Naomi, for the book of Ruth, to be about how God acts. Of course, that shouldn't come as any surprise to us. Naomi means pleasant or even pleasantness. But we see the story when Elimelech and Naomi went to Moab because of a famine. First of all, they're displaced from their home. They become refugees in an enemy nation. Moab is not a good place for an Israelite. But they go and they live there, and apparently they make a place for themselves there. Moab was not experiencing the same famine that Israel was. And Naomi and Elimelech and their 2 sons lived there. The 2 sons married Moabite women. Now, if you remember in the Old Testament, that was not a good thing. That was actually forbidden. In fact, back in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 23, look at verse 3 here. No Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants for 10 generations may be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. So the relationship between Israel and Moab is a difficult relationship. Let's jump back up here to Ruth. Elimelech and Naomi go to live in Moab. While they are there, their sons marry Moabite women. While they are there, their sons die. Elimelech dies, and suddenly Naomi exists with her 2 daughters-in-law, and that's all. She returns to Israel. The famine is over in Israel. And when she arrives, they say, "Is this really Naomi?" Naomi says, "Don't call me Naomi. Don't call me pleasant. Call me instead Mara." That means bitterness. Now, Naomi's 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. Mahlon means sickness, and Chilion means used up. As we work our way through the story, Naomi, after her husband has died, after My God is King died, after Mahlon's sickness died, and then Chilion, used up, died, Naomi said, "I'm going back to Israel." On the way there, her daughter-in-laws accompany her, and Orpah turns around and goes back. Naomi says, "My daughters," he says to Orpah and to Ruth, "My daughters, go back. There's nothing for you in Israel. It's a foreign land for you. If you go back to your home, you can at least remarry." Orpah, do you know what that means? Back of the neck. Orpah shows Naomi the back of her neck, and she returns home. Ruth, do you know what Ruth means? Ruth means lovely friend. Names indeed are important here. So is the word daughter. Now, Ruth is called, let's look here at the end of Ruth chapter 1. Naomi returned from Moab accompanied by her daughter-in-law, Ruth, the young Moabite woman. Ruth is called Naomi's daughter-in-law, but 9 times in the book of Ruth, the word daughter appears. Every time it refers to Ruth. 7 of those times, it's in the mouth of Naomi. Naomi calls Ruth her daughter. She does that in verse 12. She does it again in verse 13. She does it again in chapter 2, 11, 12, and 13 in chapter 1. In chapter 2, verse 2, she calls Ruth my daughter again in verse 8, and again in verse 22. Chapter 3, verse 1, And then Boaz 3 times refers to Ruth as his daughter. In chapter 4, that changes, and Boaz refers to Ruth as his wife. So the use of the word daughter. Naomi doesn't see Ruth as her daughter-in-law. She sees Ruth as a daughter. She sees Ruth as a loyal friend. Now, from Proverbs 31, verses 11 and 12, we saw that the theme that we're going to be looking at today is the theme of building trust. One of the ways to build a lasting friendship is to build trust. But what does that mean? First of all, what is trust? Trust is a sense of security and confidence. Trust relies on predictability. It's hard to trust someone who's a loose cannon, someone who does strange things. You trust people who are predictable. You trust people who are credible and competent. That's what trust is. But how can we go about building it? Surveys have told us that trust is on the downswing. Statistics show that people trust each other less today than they did 40 years ago. Trust is just as important now as it ever was. There are 2 kinds of trust that we can build. There's practical trust, that is being reliable and competent. In friendship, that refers to doing what you say you're going to do. But there is also emotional trust. Emotional trust happens when you go above and beyond what the other person is anticipating. That's when real friendship begins to take place. Now, there are ways to go about building trust. I'm going to put a link to this document in the notes so that you can pull this up if you would like to. How to build trust. Let's talk about that. How to build trust. First of all, you should value long-term relationships. Building trust is not something that takes place overnight. Building trust is something that indeed does take a while. You should always be honest to build trust. Nothing destroys trust quicker than lying to someone. Honor your commitments. When you say you're going to do something, go through with it. Follow through. Honor whatever commitments you've made. If something comes up and you can't do it, communicate. Let people know. Admit when you're wrong. Don't be afraid to apologize. People don't typically like excuses, but when something does go wrong, an apology does go a long way toward preserving friendship. Communicate. Be effective in your communication. Find out how the other person likes communication and do it that way. If they want to text, send them a text. If they prefer a phone call, give them that voice-to-voice connection. Be vulnerable. Let your friend know when things are tough. Vulnerability is lacking in the world that we live in today. Being vulnerable with someone else, letting them know, hey, I'm struggling. You can pray for me. You can even give me advice. That's great. Be helpful. Be available to help your friend when they need help. Show people that you care. One of the best ways to build friendship is to show your friend how you care, not only for them, but for others as well. Remember the little details. Learn the names of family members. If you say you're going to pray for someone, if they bring a prayer request to you, do it and then follow up with them. Show them that you care. Stand up for what's right. Show them that you're just, that you don't just say yes to everything that comes by, that you do have standards. And then finally, it's kind of like being vulnerable, but be transparent. If you're not doing well, let them know, hey, I'm struggling. It's very similar to being vulnerable, slight difference there. We'll put these in the show notes. You can pull those up. What I'd recommend that you do is take a look at these things. There are probably several of these things that you're doing well right now with your friends, but there are one or two that you need to work on. Pick one, write it down on a sticky note, put it on your phone. Remember to practice these different elements in building trust. The first step to a lasting friendship is to build trust with the other people. We can actually take steps to build trust with them. I encourage you, pick one element from this list that you know that you need to work on, and let's work on it.